morning. Thank you all for joining us. We've got quite a few people here already, a few still turning up. So before I hand over to Mr. Barker, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to ourselves. So obviously today we're talking about why SEO won't be the same this time next year. We know there's lots of changes happening in the world of SEO. I know there's quite a few clients who have joined today of ours that we've been talking about this stuff with for a while now, and obviously some new faces as well. But we know SEO is changing at quite a rapid pace. We like to think we're at the forefront of that in terms of keeping up with the changes that are being made and making sure that our clients stay ahead of the game. So, got Mr. Barker with us today, who is one of our SEO strategists, and he will be talking about his predictions, looking into a bit of a crystal ball, which has been sort of the running joke over the last couple of weeks, in terms of what we think is coming up, what's on the horizon. The sorts of things we think we'll be doing next year to make a success of our clients' SEO strategies. So just before I hand over to Wayne, so first things first, I'm Rob. I'm one of the co-founders here. So we're the Digital Maze. We're a full-service digital marketing agency. We're based in the Midlands, although we've got clients up and down the country. We're split very much three ways as a business. So we've got our web development team, got our SEO team, and we've got our PPC team as well. We're a team of around 36 people currently as we speak. And that's all in a nutshell. So I'm going to head over to Wayne. What Wayne doesn't know about SEO is not worth knowing. So you're in very good hands. I'm very excited to hear what Wayne's got to say, what Wayne predicts as he looks into his crystal ball. Over to you, Wayne.
Thank you very much. Right, let's see if we can get this shared. So I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me 2 secs. This is where I can no longer see what's going on. So, Rob, are we good? Can we see my screen?
Yes, perfect. It's worth probably maximising that.
Do it. Maximising it.
There you go. Spot on. Brilliant.
Yeah. Right. Well, good morning, everyone. I hope we're all doing well. As I mentioned, I cannot see anyone now, so this is all really weird. If I was able to interact with you, I would. But we're not going to beat around the bush because we've got 143 slides to get through in about half an hour or so, and I'm going to cover at least 742 different topics. So what are we here to talk about today now? Rob already mentioned that it's entitled, why SEO is not going to look the same this time next year. So we're effectively here today to talk about the future. Now, the future is not something I particularly sort of talk about or set my mind on, because talking about predictions, you see it in the industry all the time. Often a lot of these things are wrong and people waste their time doing stuff that they don't do, or the predictions come true much, much later than people predict. And also people do it, unfortunately, to grab credibility within our industry. So I was a little bit wary about it. So I spoke to a couple of people. Pete, who I've worked with for the best part of a decade now, and he's sat behind the controls today. He said, and this is a quote, it's a bold title, I think you should keep it, you'll be fine, Wayne, stop whittling. So we kept the title, and I moved forward with a predictive presentation about the future of SEO. I also spoke to John Mueller. This is not a real quote, by the way. In 2018, he says it's going to be a toughie, Wayne. We don't know what it's going to look like next year, and that's pretty true. And I think I'll touch on that a little bit when we get about halfway through the presentation. And I also spoke to my time traveling buddy and the inventor of the wormhole, Albert Einstein. I spoke to him back in 1935, and he says, I've been there, Wayne, and you're 89.746% correct. Do it. So if we're here to talk about the future and predictions, then I need to be able to prove to you that time travel is indeed real. So I'm going to prove very quickly that time travel is real. So I'm going to show you the time traveling hipster. So we're going to go through one of Einstein's wormholes, and I'm going to show you this picture from the early 1940s. This is from the reopening of the Gold Bridge in Canada. And if we hone in there, we can see a guy that doesn't look like the rest of the people in this picture. So this is 1940s, but he's wearing 2010 hipster clothes. Not evidence in itself, but what about the Mongolian mummy sporting Adidas trainers? So let's go back a couple of thousand years, and here's evidence that Adidas trainers did actually exist in the past. And you can look through loads of photos. You can go through a bunch of wormholes and discover that mobile phones have been around a lot longer than we think. So this is a painting from 1937 by a guy called Romano. It's depicting the arrival of the settlers in the 1620s, but it's quite obvious there that in this painting from the 30s that this dude in the middle is carrying a mobile phone. This is a picture from the 1962 World Cup where Brazil beat what was at the time Czechoslovakia, and you can see right down there at the bottom of the screen there that someone is using one of those brand new Samsung flip phones 50 years ago. And you can see that Marilyn Monroe at the height of her fame was having her photos taken by people in the background with mobile phones. Now, you're going to say to me, those pictures alone don't prove that time travel exists, so how can you trust what I'm going to say in the rest of this presentation? But we're going to support it with a documentary as well. So everyone loves a documentary nowadays. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of them on Netflix, and I often base presentations on documentaries that have popped up on Netflix or Disney or whatever streaming platform you have. And to support my arguments, I'm going to use the best 3-part docu-series that I've ever seen, and that was called Back to the Future. It featured a guy called Marty McFly and his strange friend Doc Brown. Now, since I started this, and I was talking to Pete the other day, he reckons it's a film, but in reality, it's a documentary. And I know it to be a documentary because no smart people would put together all these timelines about how the documentary goes back and forth in time. So I think we can safely say that we know that time travel is real because Albert Einstein spoke to me and I have all that evidence. What we're not going to cover today, ChatGPT. So I covered that recently. There's a webinar, I think from a few months ago, where I spoke about shiny object syndrome and how people were getting obsessed and really into this technology. And in that, if you want to dig it out, Pete might share it in the comments. I talked about how you couldn't trust the outputs of ChatGPT. Here's an example of it making up a load of stuff that I'm meant to have written that I have never written in my life. I'm not going to talk about Bard, even though 2 days ago they made a massive update to Bard. It's doing okay, and it now has fact-checking via Google. Why you wouldn't go to Google first before Google Bard, I don't know, but we saw in that presentation that Bard would make up a whole bunch of stuff about me and what I've done in this industry, including the fact that I was the architect behind Neil Patel's entire SEO strategy, and I'm responsible for his success in this business, so I apologize for that. So like in the mighty bush, we're now going to travel through time and space and look at what the search might look like in 2024. So a lot of the screenshots that you're going to see now have come from Google's IPO in May of this year. It was early May. So if you didn't see it, they talked about a whole bunch of stuff around AI. So the IPO in May, or as I call it, the day that Google shit itself because of ChatGPT and Bing. I've got a theory that a lot of the stuff that exists in what we're calling SGE, or what Google might look like next year, already existed, and they slapped the AI on it to appease the shareholders because they thought that Microsoft was going to get a little bit of a foothold in the industry, which hasn't happened. It's hardly changed Microsoft's share of search engine sort of stuff. So yeah, let's have a look at some of the stuff from the IPO. So these are actual screenshots. So something they talked about was how they wanted users to be able to do more with one click. So previously, if you were looking for a dress for an outdoor wedding in Miami in May, you would have performed a bunch of different searches. So Miami weather in May, dress code for outdoor weddings. What Google's interested in is you being able to put in a really sort of specific query, and they come back with a combination of results so that you've got less clicking around to do before you find the information that you want, which is resulting in this longer long tail. You can see in this example here that the query that's gone in is, what's better for a family with kids under 3 and a dog? Is it Bryce Canyon or is it Archer's National Park? And you get this AI response, followed by some what are sort of like featured snippets over there on the right. So we've not seen this change much in the last couple of months, so it feels like this will be a thing. So instead of having the one featured snippet like you traditionally have, you now got 3 over on the left-hand side. So instead of just a position 0, you got 0, 1, and 2 right-hand side. The biggie is obviously all this AI-generated content. What's actually quite interesting is how long, still to this day, it's taking for this stuff to come up. It's really slow, and in a world of where you want instant answers, it's quite off-putting, to be honest. Thumbnails, that became obvious when you looked at some of the screenshots they were sharing. The images are really quite impressive and bringing people in, and they appear in a couple of different sort of formats. So images seem like they're going to be more part of a more visual search, which Google has used that term several times over the last sort of 5-6 years. They're interested in keeping you on the search themselves. So you notice at the bottom of this screen grab, you've got a ask a follow-up. So rather than you have to jump off to another site and then come back and bounce back and go to another site, they want you to stay on the search results for a better user experience and probably to be able to sell more ads. I don't think they've figured out exactly how they're going to sell all the ads yet. This lady who did some live demonstrations talked us through some holiday stuff that she was looking at, and she wanted to be able to take her daughter out with the dolphins, I think off the coast of Florida or something like that. And it showed that topical, trustworthy stuff was being pulled into those search results. So you've got your traditional eats with now the added experience on that. So Google recently, maybe about a year ago now, added experience to the EAT acronym, and that pulls through into socials as well. So this was a screenshot. I can't remember who I got it off, probably Mordy, who's on there, where it starts showing potentially showing perspectives, i.e., different ideas from different people from different platforms. You'll notice on this screenshot that it's all Twitter, in fact, but we have seen recently more Instagram and TikTok stuff being pulled in, and it seems to be different per niche. So that's quite interesting as well. And we see a very sort of similar thing with videos coming up. So this is a more informational search. So if your business is, this applies maybe more to affiliates or stuff like that, where you're selling potentially information to take people elsewhere. Don't see this so much on e-commerce and services. We saw snapshots as well. Something that was really interesting was how the shopping graph is going to progress. So, these are actually ads at the top of there, and you notice underneath that they're showing in the 2 seconds while the AI is generating the answer for the particular query. I'm going to touch on why that's important for SEO a little later on. And we've seen more traditional guides now. A lot of the people on this webinar today will be familiar with, writing really in-depth guides to bring people in via hub content, that kind of thing, stuff where people are either not necessarily ready to purchase or looking for other things. So guides still appear to be a big thing, even on more e-commerce sort of queries. So it'd be nice to get those kind of guides up alongside. In this example here, you can see I think they're commuter e-bikes. And it's important to say that this is changing all the time. I briefly mentioned that BOD changed it at its biggest update 2 days ago in 6 months, literally as I was putting the first slides for this together. So it is changing all the time. So Alida noticed this the other day, where they've actually started testing a slightly more traditional approach to getting AI into the search results. We've also seen that something that was missing in May was links to the pages where they were getting this information from. They are now bringing links in, and Google have announced that they are putting the links in, so we can assume that that is going to stay. But then we see worrying tests like this, where we can't actually see the local pack. So Google's not actually showing a traditional local pack there. A little bit worrying. Is it a test? Yes. Is it likely to stick? I would say no. And then we're seeing people like Lily Ray who use this, who are using SGE all the time and reporting on it, getting frustrated because the AI is not giving the answers that she expects to see or wants to find. So are they there yet? I wouldn't say so. And Glenn Gabe said something the other day, and this is where predictions can get a bit funny. He says he thinks it's only going to roll out if it's revenue neutral or revenue positive. You know, it would be ridiculous for Google to push this out if it's not going to make them money, or at least keep them capped at where they are now. And we can look for the clues elsewhere on how things may change as well. So this was September the 11th, which is what, 10 days ago. And shopping tab listings have been updated in Search Console. I've not really seen this yet, but it has been sort of rolling out slowly. So the shopping graph adds organic listings for shopping is going to be more important, because we can see that Google has invested the time into being able to show you that information and tell you how you can make that better. Something that happened in August that can give us some clues on where they're going to go is the FAQ rich snippets and the how-to rich snippets have been taken out of the search results. Now, FAQ snippets had been abused by SEOs trying to take up more of the SERP space. How-to were genuinely quite helpful when you're on your phone and you've got to do something. So you've got to ask why they are going to take how-to rich snippets out of the search results. I mean, the obvious thing is they need to make space for other stuff. And some things are going to remain the same. So this is from John Mueller a couple of weeks ago. Technical SEO is not going away. It continues to be the foundation of everything built on the open web. So anyone who works in technical SEO, you can assume your job is safe. As far as AI in the future goes with technical SEO, I'll touch on that in a little bit, but there are ways that we can use AI to make that job easier, but you still need the critical thinking to know what to do in the first place. So, back to the time travel. Doc Brown, in that documentary, he never had all the answers, and neither do I or anyone else. So anytime someone's making a bold prediction where they say that they're sure that this thing is going to happen, you have to take it with a pinch of salt. And anyone who's seen any of my webinars or seen me present in real life will know that I often like to use this phrase. You can look backwards to look forward. So you can look to the past to know what might happen in the future. Example, AI generated content. From the start of this year, it just exploded and people are whopping out AI content that has no worth whatsoever. Even some of the stuff that's edited, it has no worth. It's the same as what exists on the internet already. So if we look back, we know that over a decade ago, Google released, 24 different permutations of the Panda algorithm. And what that was there for was to stop people creating crappy content on a massive scale. So Google know about this. Do we realistically think that they're not going to be able to tackle the AI problem? Of course, that comes with some fun, because the helpful content update started rolling out 5 days ago. Presently, a lot of AI content is ranking, but I expect that to be fixed. So you can look backwards to look forwards. I want to take of something else that happened in the past that can help us figure out where we're going to end up. So in 2018, I think it was, although this is dated 2020, Google might need to be careful about that because it's chasing people who just update stuff. They talked Consumer Insights, or Think with Google, did a big report on what they decided to call the messy middle. So this is how people search for and make decisions on things they're going to purchase. When I say purchase, we're not strictly just talking e-commerce here. You buy a service, so anything where a transaction takes place. How do people go about that? So I want to take a few bits out of what this report and just highlight them for you at the moment. So the way people make decisions is messy, and it's getting messier. It's not linear. So the traditional way to think about SEO is person type in black microwave, person land on black microwave page, person buy black microwave straight away, and everyone's happy. Yay, happy customer, happy person who sold it to them. And that's just not how it works. It's not worked like that forever in reality. This is what the messy middle looks like in one of their diagrams. You've got the triggers at the top and the purchase at the bottom. You've got exploration on the left there and evaluation on the right. And people who are looking for information weigh up all their options. And they do that across a huge array of online sources, such as search engines, social media, aggregators, review websites. And what they do is they repeat this cycle. So they're coming in, I need this thing, evaluate, explore, loop, until they finally make the decision on what to do. And this is the messy middle where you as a website, as a business, need to be turning up as many times as possible. So to take their 4 points, this is what they suggest you do. You ensure your brand presence, you employ behavioral science principles, and you close the gap between trigger and purchase, and you build flexible, empowered teams who can work cross-functionally. Okay, let's look backwards to the messy middle, to look forwards on where we're going to be next year and beyond. Take a couple of those points. Ensure brand presence, so your product or service is strategically front of mind while your customers explore. Okay, let's go back to the Google announcements. Your product or service is strategically front of mind. So there you go. There's those guides there, front of mind. Ensure brand presence, so your product or service is strategically front of mind while your customers explore, front of mind. Close the gap between trigger and purchase, so your existing and potential customers spend less time exposed to competitor brands. Shopping while AI generates stuff. Close the gap between trigger and purchase. Have content that covers things that people are truly searching for in unique ways. Build flexible, empowered teams who can work cross-functionally to avoid traditional branding and performance silos that are likely to leave gaps in the messy middle. Perspectives, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it might be. Build flexible, empowered teams who can work cross-functionally. Videos, content creators. It's kind of heavy, yeah? Lot to take in. Well, let's go back to our amazing documentary and see what Doc Brown had to say in that. There's that word again, heavy. Why are things so heavy in the future? Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull? Marty in the documentary says if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. So the thing is, and this is one of the problems with predictions, all of this is not going to apply to you. There's a bunch of people on this webinar today in different niches, with different websites, with different budgets. But the thing is, some of it might. So you've got to open your mind, use your eyes. Part of your strategy, any strategy, should be the ability to change it and communicate upwards why you need to change that strategy. The world of search is constantly changing, but we often are asked to produce 12-month plans. And it gets really hard to be able to deviate from those plans. And I'm not going to tell you what you should be doing, but I can tell you what you might want to be thinking about. Again, don't forget, this is going to be different for every single person on this call, unless you work at the same business, of course. Quality over quantity, so be different, don't emulate. ChatGPT banging out the same stuff. We've seen it over and over again. You need to show your expertise and not just generalist kind of stuff. You need to show why the content on your site is different, but also why you're in a place to be able to sort of help people. It's got to be solid, not fast. this is one of the things that, you know, with the ChatGPT thing, we're so many people are just pumping stuff out and they're doing it fast and not really thinking about the end user. At the end of the day, we shouldn't be chasing the algorithm. Google's chasing the user. That's what they're doing. So we should be chasing the user as well, which leads me into brand. Who are you and what do you actually stand for? What actually makes you different? And you've got to take this, your brand across as many places as you can be to address that messy middle, and you've got to be consistent. Think social. For years, SEOs have said social doesn't matter for SEO, and it didn't. They tried, Google tried, Yandex tried, I think Bing tried at one point to incorporate social signals into the algorithms, but they're just so wild and messy and full of spam that it just made no sense. But when you look at how the search results might look soon, if you're not doing the social, or you're not on the social places where your audience are, then you're going to be missing out on some of that search, that SERP estate. But you also got to look where Google thinks your users are. And don't forget that it's social media, not social media. You're meant to interact. You're meant to be able to have some kind of community around there. You've got to think images. You know, what's going to pull people in? If Google's going to this more visual search, then whopping something out on Canva in 2 minutes ain't going to cut the mustard. You know, it's not going to cut the mustard. If it's worth your time, then it's worth paying for and stand out from the crowd. What's a common theme in all this? Internet has made us sheep. It's clogged up with the same shit. Stand out or fizzle out. You've got to bring your teams and people together with common business goals, and they've got to be able to work together. And something that I think is incredibly key is how we think about keyword rankings. They've been around since the dawn of SEO. For many years, we've told people not to worry too much about them or very particular keywords and use them more as a barometer. So here's the kind of thing that you would usually see, you know, here's the keywords and, you know, they've gone up or they've gone down. The volatility over the last 6 months in Google, up and down all the time. I'm not saying you shouldn't track keywords. I'm not saying you shouldn't have some, you know, sort of barometer style keywords, but you need to think how this is going to work from next year when, you know, we have probably the most seismic shift in SEO in over a decade. You've got to think about that. Generative AI is pushing stuff down. You've got new featured snippets. You know, you could be ranking position 1, but not visible for a long, long time. So you've got to think more about what I'm calling SERP ownership. I'm sure there's some people out there have called it something better. But you've got to think about SERP ownership. So this is from some data from an actual client, and what you'll see, if you can see, lean in, you can see what we've got there is own space, social space, partner space, competitor space, and other space. So what we're doing here is breaking down the available SERP space and looking where our client is, rather than going, you rank for this particular keyword. So that breaks down a little bit like this. So you've got the SERP space available, domain and social space, domain and social space. So we're looking for the share of the SERP. So for this particular keyword, and you can bucket them up, we've got 17% of the available SERP space for this particular keyword. You can't do this for every single keyword, so you do have to make some judgment calls. But what you can see on the left-hand side here is the this particular client has space in the questions, so in the people also asked section, and they also rank fairly high organically, and we can see that the a competitor has taken up the top spot, which, you know, is normal. And then we've got the SERP feature breakdown on the right-hand side: organic related searches, questions, images, shopping. This will allow you, if you bucket these together, to go, right, okay, do I need images? Do I need social? What do I need for my particular business? And there's a couple of things I want to point you towards. I'm not going to cover these. These probably deserve at least a webinar of their own to cover, maybe even one each. So Here's a few things that I want you to look into after you leave this webinar today. If there's enough interest, we'll cover them in another webinar later on. But you need to be looking at shopping graph SEO. So we've touched on that with the images and what Google's bringing into Search Console. You need to look into knowledge graph SEO and making sure that your brand is appearing as it should be. This is more applicable to every business, whereas shopping graph is obviously more, well, is e-commerce. You need to be looking into entity SEO, which is more about what I was just talking about, less about the keywords and the context of everything that sits around it. And I did just notice that that's a Neil Patel. So we'll get rid of that. Use these ones instead. There's a great article on Search Engine Land and Search Engine Journal, and I brought together a whole list of resources for you to be able to look at to learn about those things. And again, if there's enough interest, we'll cover them in the future. A couple of tools for you to look at. So this is Inlinks, and what Inlinks does is it helps I'm not going to say automate, semi-automate entity SEO. So what you're looking at there is the topic graph wheel for the actual Boom site. And we can see how we've connected the entities in via different pages. And what it does is it injects the schema to say that this page is about this thing, or it's the same as this thing. It also helps with contextual internal linking at scale. You do need to audit them and get rid of some stuff, but it's a great tool. WordLift does similar stuff with schema and entity SEO, but they also help out with product knowledge graph, or the shopping graph as I called it, to give your products more visibility. So that's one worth checking out. Keyword Insights. So this is what people consider a clustering tool, but it's actually using some smart AI to help with briefing. What I like most about Keyword Insights is what they're doing with the search results is they're clustering by search results rather than NLP. So the majority of keyword clustering tools will look at NLP, and then you end up clustering it the same way as everyone else, whereas Keyword Insights clusters it by URLs. So you're actually looking at what Google's serving up, and you're able to make better content briefs off that. Those images that you saw from the search, where I'm looking at the SERP overview rather than keywords, came from a tool called SERP Sketch. They've been around quite a few years now. I'm not quite sure how other ranking tools are going to deal with the shift in how Google looks and how it ranks things, and how they're going to tell when AI is and isn't being generated by Google. SERP Sketch, I suspect, are going to be at the forefront of that. I have seen, what's it called? SEMrush have got something in the works. I've not heard of the other tools or how they're going to deal with it, but they've got to be planning for it. So keep your eyes peeled there, but I do recommend SERP Sketch. No matter whether SGE is rolled out or not, I think you need to be thinking about all these things. But what's the best combo of tools? Your eyes. Spend the time looking at what's in the search result. Get out of the tools, and I've just recommended some tools. Get out of the tools and look what is actually happening in your search results. And then, use your brain. Think about it. Critically think about it. Don't just pump out some keywords with some search volumes and expect this to work for you, especially in the future. Here's a quote from me from 2029. I stand by all these resources all these years later. Quickly back to the time travel. Why should you trust me? At 8:22 p.m. on September the 21st in 2018, I tweeted out this. In five years' time, I'm going to deliver a webinar about how time travel is real and how you can use it for SEO. So I wish I'd tweeted it out in the morning, but 5 years. And here's a link to prove that that is a real tweet, and I've not just gone into Inspect Element and changed it. So there's a link if you want to go and check out that I am indeed a time traveler. And the thing is, we've always been ahead in here. I've been talking about it for years. So we go back to September 2022. I talked about quality over quantity. In March 2022, I talked about how you look at the bigger picture and you have to work together to bring things together. In April 2019, I talked about Back to the Future, Einstein, wormholes, and fixing shit that other people made a right royal mess of. In December 2018, I did a talk about drinking, thinking, and looking at the search results to get where you need to be and figure out what is actually ranking beyond just looking at a couple of keywords. The clues are all there. You've got to go Columbo. Use your eyes, use your brain. The thing is, people mock us time travelers, think we're just making it all up. So I'm going to leave you with this quote from my time traveling sage buddy, Mr. Albert Einstein. People like us who believe in physics know that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. And I think that's all I've got today. "34 minutes, Rob, I told you."
Genuinely was.
It's almost like I can predict the future.
Well, look, I appreciate that, Wayne. Yeah, if you want to stop sharing your screen, we'll take some questions. So let me have a quick look in the chat. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I shall ask Mr. Barker. So let's have a quick look then. So what's going to be the biggest challenge for our clients over the next few months, and any sort of real life examples that we can think of?
What's going to be our challenge, or is that coming from someone else?
Well, client for our type of client, but effectively becomes our client, doesn't it? Sorry, our challenge in respect of SEO.
What's going to be the biggest challenge? So this presentation was made up over the last sort of, in my head, in the last few months, and I have read. In fact, I think I shared on our Slack about 50 different resources that I picked out as being very important. Keeping up. These things don't have to be complex, but keeping up and being able to pivot, I hate that word, but being able to pivot are going to be big challenges. So you've got to be able to keep up with what's changing now or what might change, and you're making those decisions and being able to communicate the changes in strategy and why you need to do that, or why you need to be thinking of something that hasn't even happened yet, I think are probably the biggest challenges. Technically wise, you can get your head around stuff pretty quickly. Shopping graph SEO is not particularly hard. It's not a hard concept to get your head around. Should you be doing it now? Yes. Will it help you out in the future? Probably yes. Crack on. Do the things that are going to make a difference now as well as potentially in the future. So you kind of bring it in. But yeah, communication is always tough, especially when it gets more complex.
No, makes sense. Makes sense. Carrie has asked, and I imagine this would be quite a tough one to answer, Wayne, but if you could take one message away from this presentation, what would you recommend that would be?
One message. Can I have two? One message is pay attention. I talk about eyes and brains being the best tools all the time. Pay attention to what's happening. Keep your head close to the ground. And if you can't, make sure someone has within your team, within your business. Because the thing is, we saw it happen early doors of ChatGPT. We saw it happen straight after Google's announcements. People make these bold predictions straight away, like literally straight away, because they want the cred points. I did a presentation 5-6 years ago now, where I can't repeat the title of it on a webinar. But it's about not listening to the experts and forging your own path. Staying close to the ground, understanding how your business performs and how your competitors perform and what works in the search results. So eyes and brain is the one takeaway.
There we go.
People pay me millions of pounds to just say eyes and brain.
There we go. Andy Crouch. So AI generated content. How do we think this will be punished, or will it be punished?
Well, it depends on your definition of punishment. So Google's dealt with this before. I touched on it in there, with Panda. I've lived through this. I've seen businesses back in the old days, lose traffic and revenue because of taking shortcuts. It's not that you're strictly going to get punished. This is not like, early days of Penguin, early days of Panda. You're not strictly getting punished. You're just getting demoted, or not indexed. What we've seen, especially over the last year, is Google is taking longer to index pages. It's getting more fussy. This is them getting ready for it. So, your punishment will, you waste time producing it and it doesn't get indexed. And if it does get indexed, it just doesn't rank or turn up in the search results. Like I mentioned, we are seeing some issues with the current helpful content update that's rolling out. Was looking at a lady's site last night she's a travel blogger and has had her traffic plummeted 80% overnight. They have got some stuff wrong with this, so I think they'll be frantically tweaking the buttons in the back. But yeah, your punishment is not getting indexed and not getting your content shown. And the thing is as well, what we've got to think about it with the helpful content update, and they said this a year ago when they released the first one, if there's too much unhelpful content on a site, not only will that apply to the pages, but it could apply site-wide as well. So if you've got a 100-page site and you suddenly bang 2,000 AI articles on it, and it's ranking well from there, when Google figures that out, not only will they, it's possible that Google will not only de-index or take out the index the offending AI articles, but it could affect the rest of your human generated content, your important service pages or whatever, and they could disappear as well. So, of course, no one knows the threshold. I expect the threshold is fairly high, so you've got to be pretty bad to, get a site-wide sort of punishment for it. But yeah, there's that to think about as well. Would you risk your entire business on a bet that some poorly written AI-generated content could bring you a few quid in? That's what you got to ask yourself. If you're willing to take the risk, I've got I have no problem with it, but I wouldn't risk it on any business I work with.
I mean, key thing takeaway for me there is that the risk is wasting time and whatnot, but actually impacting the stuff that historically has been working as well could have a massive negative impact, especially if you rely quite heavily on generating opportunities and sales via SEO. Shelley has asked, and I think I might have asked you a similar question to this in the past, Wayne. Okay. Insurance and financial services businesses.
Yeah.
Any sort of specific advice to those in relation to the approach you just ran through?
Insurance and finance. Well, so essentially, these sites fall into your money, your life. So for those that don't know, that means if you're going to part with some cash and it could affect your life, then you're held to stricter guidelines by Google than someone who sells, I don't know, microwaves. We'll go back to the microwaves. You're going to be held to stricter standards. So realistically, should financial service people be TikToking? Probably not. We'll see when SG rolls out more what they're showing, and then you have to look. I think one of the most important things with the sort of financial insurance sector is anything that you're writing on your site has to be connected to a real person. That real person has to be qualified and be an expert. Those pages that talk about the person being an expert and able to talk about these things have to be connected to your social profiles or where you're cited in particular documents or where you've spoken. Google needs to be able to connect the dots. If you think about shopping graph or knowledge graph SEO or entity SEO, all Google's doing is taking data and piecing it together. This thing here, this thing there, this thing there. Absolutely. Even now and for the last couple of years, there's no strict. Whenever anyone says there's, EAT is part of the algorithm, it's really not. But being able to demonstrate that you are an expert and you can be trusted is important. So, building out those about pages, the meet the team pages, connecting those to your LinkedIn, being active in the places where your expertise is needed. So I guess that would, the future is not going to change from the past with that kind of stuff. Looking backwards to look forwards. If you've not got those pages, you've not got those connections for Google, there's, odds are you won't get as much traffic as you might.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on that has always been, and this is based on your advice, Wayne, has always been financial services, health, insurance, anything that has a real life consequence to it. If anything was to go wrong or a bad advice was to be given, you're held to a much, much higher standard by the search engines and a lot of other industries. So actually your content on your website needs to be backed up by authorities, backed up by individuals that are able to back it up, have the credentials to back it up. That's really, really important. Law, again, is another one of those, for example. Okay, so probably got time for one or two more questions. So just going back to the AI thing, which seems to be a running theme. And I think we're all interested in, I think we can all agree that using AI in its entirety is a very bad idea. And I think Anna has asked, what about using it partially? So what about using it for bits of a post? What about using it for a structure? Is there a way AI can be used safely to speed up workflows? I suppose is the question.
You've got to ask yourself why before you do it. So trying to think of some examples. By and large, say you've got a piece and and only 10% of it is AI. My question is, can you have written that yourself? Will it affect? Probably not. So I've been running tests for a few months now with inserting just edited bits of AI in, unedited bits of AI into stuff that we've got, tracking performance. By and large, it's statistically doesn't really make a difference. I think I've seen it on one page where it made a difference, and that was one where not only did I add a bit of AI, but I added some personality and answered things around the AI in a way that AI would not respond unless it had access to my tone of voice and my lovely writing style. So, I mean, I don't, using it for bits, I don't see a massive problem with. There's some stuff that, if it's a step-by-step thing, whatever the AI produces is not going to be that different to what you produce, which is not going to be that different to then the content that's on that, that's out there anyway. You ask yourself, is it worth me creating this content in the first place? As far as, what we've used AI for probably the last couple of years is more of an assistance. And you've got to remember, this is not AI either. I don't know why we call it AI. It's just a large language model. It's text-based stuff on steroids. We've used it for, when you get stuck, you've not always got someone, to bounce ideas off or, helping you write briefs. I touched on keyword insights. They use AI within their briefing, but there's a lot of management from you yourself when you're doing that. So, I mean, no problem putting it in there, but if you're just making it to make the content longer because you read on Neil Patel's blog that it's got to be 3,000 words, then no, don't do it. Use your brain. Does it need to be there? It's not going to affect you negatively, I don't think. Not in small doses.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to do one last question, and it's from our very own Katja, who is a member of our SEO team. So Katja has asked, what would be the golden ticket recommendation for a skill or trading to invest in right now so we don't get left behind?
Repeat that one again, sorry. I was reading what Rutger said at the same time. I'm failing to multitask.
Sorry. Yeah. So, what is the golden ticket recommendation for a skill to invest in now, so you don't get left behind in the future?
I think if we're taking this as someone who's in the industry rather than someone who's working for a company and has multiple things to look at, I think technical SEO is not going anywhere. I shared a tweet from Mueller from a couple of weeks ago, and about a year ago he was quoted as saying technical SEO is getting harder and harder and harder. So I think that is probably, if you want to, for want of a better phrase, future-proof yourself as an SEO, then you need to double down on your tech skills and your critical thinking as connected to your technical SEO things. And that technical SEO goes into some of the things I talked about anyway. So shopping graph, knowledge graph, entity SEO, semantic SEO have elements of tech in them. And you're also talking schema as well there. So without a doubt, technical SEO is going nowhere. It's going to get easier to deploy things and fix things and find things on scale, but you still need that critical thinking. So technical SEO, critical thinking, but it's nice to have lots of other stuff as well.
Perfect. Well, look, I appreciate that, Wayne. Fantastic presentation as always. Thank you everyone for turning up, and all 43 of you that stuck around for the questions. There's been one or two questions about whether the presentations and this recording will be available. The answer is yes. So it will be available on our website, which is thedigitalmaze.com, on our YouTube channel, where all of our previous webinars are, and our podcast. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, there's lots and lots of good material on there. And also this will be circulated via email at some point in the next day or two. So yeah, thank you all for your time, and we'll give you your morning back. I know a Thursday morning to take up everyone's time for an hour is a big ask, so I appreciate everyone for turning up. I hope it's been useful, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.